So this idea originated as an intellectual statement, but while working on the project, the intellectual concept somehow became quite emotional for me. It's important for me to connect with the work in an authentic way. Therefore, I usually choose themes relating to identity, upbringing, culture. When I'm busy working, it often feels like I tap into a part of me that feels sad or uncomfortable. But then after completion of the work, I always realize with a little surprise that I must have done shadow work through my project as the emotion made way for a feeling of completion and integration. So by making art, I'm speaking in a different voice. It's a 3D narrative in this instance through sculptural form. So the work is presented as a procession of many characters moving in different directions from the central arc in the form of a voetryke monument, which is a principal symbol presenting Afrikaner ideology. So the origin of Afrikaner ideology lies in the story of the Tower of Babel. So the Tower of Babel was a symbol for the creation of the society, where God divided one existing language into many and then scattered people across the earth to form new nations. Then God destroyed this tower, which had the potential to unify all nations and as a result create one nation. Therefore, nations were forever prevented from understanding each other. The Tower of Babel is being pulled via a yoke on a baby's back. The baby is crawling on all fours with an expression of agony on its face. And the baby has no hands or feet, implying the crisis of the next generation Afrikaner identity of where do we go now and what do we do now. The sacrificial lamb is just part of the ideology. Every year during our emergency drills at school, a teacher told one of the children or said that one child in the class has to fall on a hand grenade if it was thrown into the class in order to save everybody. And this was always told to us in the most normal way, in a nice, sweet, enticing voice. Hence I made a biscuit, a ginger cake, to sugarcoat that warped idea of one child to offer themselves. In fundamental Calvinistic teaching, it's a sin to rebel against God, and government is a surrogate of God. So therefore, it was seen as inappropriate to question the ideology. By means of this ideology and culture, a construct was born that has left a legacy of divisiveness. The state implemented segregation policies, using the church to serve and support political intentions. The Dutch Reformed Church promoted a sense of superiority, explicitly comparing themselves to the chosen Israeli nation. That's an idea that was the basic concept of nationalist thought. And this I try to present in the stereotypes of the sculptures being muffled, blinded, or following the herd. Psychologically, I'm working through the values, traditions, and cultural beliefs imparted to me as a child raised in a middle-class Afrikaner Calvinist society. I'm working through these constructs literally and physically by making sculptural presentations for this installation. The identities of the sculptures portray and speculate on close-mindedness, fanaticism, and the burden of this ideology left on its own people in the following generations. Afrikaner nationalism, apartheid, and Afrikaner identity were for many years practically inseparable. The fall of apartheid and the failure of Afrikaner nationalism therefore represented an intense crisis for Afrikaner identity. The identity is now in disarray and it tipped Afrikaner identity into turmoil, not least because of their sense of themselves as moral beings who were radically challenged. It is now a struggle to cleanse themselves of the stain of apartheid and to adapt to changing historical conditions by having to make sense and understand the underpinnings of apartheid and colonialism in order to move forward. So the installation for this work, I use mixed media. I prefer to work in sculpture with clay, but in this instance I used a whole lot of barbed wire, cold porcelain, rope, acrylics, just a whole mixed media, yeah. So I find that clay is an apt medium due to its rigidity after firing, and it's tying in with the austerity, unyielding and inflexibility of the characters. The work is intended as a catalyst for the viewer, regardless of his or her religious standpoint, to contemplate that to be oppressed is soul-destroying, but to oppress is in a different way and inverse way also destroying its own soul. For every action there's a reaction, a consequence, and that there's a kind of energy or a spirit being passed down from one generation to the next. So this is reflecting very much on the legacy that the Afrikaner apartheid, that ideology left on the next generation, just talking about a violence that turned on itself, a woundedness from within, and just the ideology's complete demand of obedience and traumatization that was caused by that. It is talking about the consequence then on the next generation Afrikaners and the wounds and the weight and the warping that they carry, the effect of decisions made by the forefathers, and yeah, the consequences of that on the next generation Afrikaners.